Please state your name and spell your name, your first and last name for the record.
Stephen Woodard, STEVEN WOODARD.
Mr. Woodard, did you witness a shooting in front of the Sunshine Grocery Store on May 31st, 2019?
Yes.
When a police officer shot an individual?
Yes, I did.
Why were you at the grocery store that day?
My wife was dropping off our son's friend.
What kind of car were you in?
Four-door Suzuki XLT 7, I think.
Where were you sitting at the time you arrived at the grocery store?
The passenger seat.
And you mentioned that your wife was with you?
Yes.
And what is her name?
Sabrina.
And who else was with you in the car?
Our son's friend, Sawyer.
And again, why did you arrive at the store?
Oh, because the lady that owns the store wanted my son's friend to come work for her.
Did your wife work at the store?
Yes, she did.
Where did you live at this time?
A block away.
And was that in an apartment nearby?
Yeah.
So it sounds like your wife and your son's friend went into the store. You remained in the passenger seat?
Yeah.
And when you were in the passenger seat, did you notice a police officer walking toward the store?
Yes, I did.
What happened when you saw, and do you know that police officer now to be Jeff Nelson?
Yes.
Now, what happened after you noticed him walking toward the store? Could you please state what happened next?
He approached Jesse and asked him, or told him to turn around. He said something along the lines of, already had to deal with you once, or I'm tired of dealing with you, and you need to turn around and stand up and turn around and cuff up.
All right. Now, you mentioned Jesse. At the time of this incident, did you know Jesse Sarey?
No, I didn't.
Had you ever seen Mr. Nelson before?
No.
And what was Mr. Sarey doing as the police officer was walking toward the grocery store?
He was getting something, trying to find something to drink out of a box of garbage on the side. An ice cooler.
Standing or sitting at the time?
He was sitting.
What kinds of clothes was he wearing?
I don't recall. I think like a sweatshirt.
So you said that and I'll refer to Mr. Nelson as the defendant. You said that the defendant walked up to Mr. Sarey and made some comments to him, including stand up, you're under arrest, or what did he say?
I mean, I don't recall exactly. It was something like stand up and turn around and put your hands behind your back.
And when the defendant approached Mr. Sarey, how close was he to Mr. Sarey?
He was very close.
How would you say, a couple of feet?
I would say a couple inches, half a foot.
And was Mr. Sarey sitting against the grocery store wall, or was he sitting in front of it?
No, he was sitting against it.
And did you get a sense when you were watching that how big Mr. Sarey was relative to the police officer, the defendant?
Yes, I did.
How would you describe that?
Like David and Goliath.
Why do you say that?
Because the officer was 2, 3, 4 times bigger than him, it looked like.
Okay. So the defendant is standing over Mr. Sarey. What happens next?
After he told him to turn around and cuff up, they just kind of came into each other, and then they just started fighting. Like they're going around in circles like a Tasmanian devil in the old Bugs Bunny movie cartoons.
And when you say they started fighting, could you describe what kind of fighting?
Like grappling.
Okay. And do you mean
almost like hug fighting? There wasn't a lot of swinging or any of that. It was just them wrestling with each other's like. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
How would you describe what Mr. Sarey was doing at this time?
He was trying to get away. He was just trying to, that's what it looked like.
And how would you describe what Mr. Nelson was doing at this time?
He was trying to put him in handcuffs, you know.
What happened next?
I, for a second, because they were going around like tussling with each other, standing up, I jumped out of the car, and then a knife like hit my foot. So I picked it up and put it on the hood of the car.
And why did you put it on the hood of the car?
I didn't want anybody to get a hold of it. I didn't want anybody to get hurt.
What happened next?
Next, Officer Nelson just had him in a headlock and was punching him repeatedly.
How many times do you think he was punching him?
Oh, I want to say at least 10.
And how would you describe what those punches looked like?
It looked like somebody that was being in a headlock just getting punched in the face. I was thinking, man, if that was me, I'd be done.
What was Mr. Sarey doing while he was being punched?
Not much. I'm not sure what he was doing. He was getting beat up.
Did the punches appear to affect Mr. Sarey?
Not really,
And why do you say that?
because there wasn't time for it to. I mean, he was just getting beat up. You know, it all happened so quick. I don't think there was time for him to feel either way about it.
So you mentioned that the defendant punched Mr. Sarey during this struggle several times. What happened next?
While he had him in the headlock, Jesse's hand was around the officer's waist, and he brushed the gun, the butt of the gun, and that's when the officer kind of pushed him and stepped back and pulled his gun out and shot him.
Now, when you say did you say he reached around and touched the officer's gun?
Yeah, he was in a headlock, and so that's where just his arms could be, and you know, had his arms around his waist and just touched the barrel of his gun, or the butt of his gun. But as soon as he just brushed it, the officer got him off, and that was it.
When Mr. Sarey brushed the gun as you described it, did the officer stand there? Did he step back?
He like pushed him and stepped back at the same time, like disengaged him.
Now, on the evening of this incident, right afterwards, you said that that Mr. Sarey tried to grab the officer's gun. When you said that, do you remember that?
No, I don't recall that, but
What is it that you saw happen?
I saw him brush the butt of the gun like that.
And was he reaching around at that time?
Yeah.
Did he ever get a hold of the gun? Did he ever handle it?
No.
Did he ever tug on it?
No.
Did it ever come out of the holster in any way, shape, or form?
No. No.
Did he ever have control of the gun at any point on that day?
No.
Okay, you mentioned that the officer, after his gun was brushed, that he stepped back to keep it away from Mr. Sarey. What happened next?
He shot him. He shot him in what looked like the chest area. And then he took his gun and he looked over at me as he was going to point it in my direction, and then he turned around and shot Jesse in the head after that.
So let's go back to where the officer stepped away after the gun was brushed. What exactly did you see the defendant do at that point?
After he pushed him away, Jesse was falling. He was like, he pushed him and pulled out his gun and shot him at the same time Jesse was falling.
And how did he push him?
I don't, because they were so close that it's like he got spooked when Jesse touched the barrel of his gun, so he pushed him off and just pulled his gun out and shot him.
Was there any point while you were watching the struggle that you became concerned about whether the officer or the defendant had it under control?
Yeah, right before I got out of the car.
And how long did that last, that sense that you had?
That second. Time for me to just jump out of the car.
And once you got out of the car, did your impression change?
Yes.
And why was that?
Because once I got out of the car and the knife hit my foot and I picked it up on the hood, that's when the officer had him in a headlock and just started punching him in the face or in the head.
Now, you mentioned when you got out of the car, you picked up the knife, right?
Yeah.
Can you describe what you saw when you got out of the car relative to the knife? What did you see?
The knife was just on the ground. I felt it hit my foot, but it was just on the ground when I looked.
All right. And was the knife folded or was it open?
It was closed, folded.
Did you ever see the knife unfolded at any point?
No.
Did you ever see Mr. Sarey with the knife in his hands? Did you ever see Mr. Sarey threaten Mr. Nelson, the defendant, in any way with the knife?
No.
I'm going to show you something, and I'm putting my hand over my right shoulder like this, as though I have a knife in my hand. Did you ever see Mr. Sarey in this position with the knife?
No.
Where was the knife when you picked it up, approximately?
Just on the ground. Like, we were so close, three of us, like, it was just on the ground, right by my foot. Like,
How would you describe where you were relative to the struggle that was occurring?
I feel like I could have held my arm out like this and touched Jesse at one point.
Was the car that you were in parked right in front of where the struggle occurred?
Yeah.
And when you stepped out, are you familiar with the parking bumpers that were in front of the store?
Yeah.
And were you near that parking bumper?
Yeah. At one point, one of my legs was over it. I think maybe when I picked up the knife.
Now, on the evening of the incident, you were interviewed by a police officer named Danny Benavente. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And isn't it the case you told him that you thought the knife had fallen out of the uniform to the ground?
I don't recall.
Do you remember that happening?
No.
Sounds like what you recall is that the knife hit your foot and you picked it up.
Yep.
Where did you put it?
I put it on the hood of the car.
And when you say the car, which car?
Our car. The Suzuki.
And when you put it on the car, was it folded?
Yes.
When you got out of the car, do you recall saying anything during the scuffle? This is at or about the time you had picked up the knife. Do you recall saying anything to anybody in the scuffle?
When I first got out of the car, I said, "Officer, do you need help? Anything I can do?" And then I told Jesse to quit resisting.
Do you recall what Mr. Sarey said back?
I think he said, "I'm not resisting."
What did you say?
I said, "Bullshit or not."
Why did you tell him to stop resisting?
Because I tell everybody, if a police officer tells you to do something, you should do it. Otherwise, you could end up dead.
Now, you mentioned the defendant pushing Mr. Sarey away. And then, did you see him reach for his weapon at that point?
Yeah, because he shot him right after that.
Right. And where did you say he shot him?
In like the upper chest, torso area.
Do you remember what you said when you saw that?
I said, "Oh, he just shot him."
Were you surprised that?
Yeah.
What did you see? What did you see Mr. Sarey do at or about the time he was shot and right afterwards?
I seen him dying. He was on the ground in the fetal position.
Did he fall immediately after being shot?
Yeah.
Was he standing or falling at the time of the first shot?
He was falling.
And is it the case that after the incident you believe that Mr. Sarey was already on the ground at the time of the first shot?
Yeah. Yes.
And afterwards, were you shown a video by a detective from the Port of Seattle Police?
Yeah. Yes.
And why did the Port of Seattle police officer show you that video?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge, speculation.
Did he tell you?
No, he didn't say.
All right. And afterwards, were you asked about whether or not you wanted to change your statement about whether Mr. Sarey was on the ground at the time of the first shot or whether he was standing?
They asked me that, and I said, no, I want to keep it the same. And then they said, okay. And they showed me the little clip where he wasn't on the ground where he got shot. And I said, okay, well, I guess I have to change it.
As you sit here today and you're thinking back in your memory, what do you remember saying happened at the time of the first shot?
Always feel like he was on the ground when he got shot. I don't care what the video shows.
No. You've looked at the video.
I've seen the video, yeah.
And would you agree that he appears to be standing or falling at the time of the first shot?
Yes.
Now, after the first shot, you mentioned that Mr. Sarey fell immediately to the ground. What exactly did you see happen at that point? What was Mr. Sarey doing at that point?
Dying. He was on the ground dying. Like there was no fight or nothing in him. He was done.
Did he ever get into a squatting position and look like he was going to go after the defendant?
No.
Do you have any doubt in your mind about that?
No.
Did he ever make any motions, hand motions or other motions toward the defendant in a threatening or other way?
No.
So he's on the ground and you've described him as dying. How would you describe how he looked at that point?
How he looked?
Yeah, how did Mr. Sarey look?
Like he was dead. Like he was dying. There was blood coming out of his mouth that was like old tomato paste in a can, you know? So
What else did you see?
I seen the officer shoot him in the head after that.
Okay, let's talk about that. So Mr. Sarey is on the ground, and as you've described it, he was dying. Did you then see anything further that the defendant did at that time?
He pointed his gun in my direction and looked at me and then went back and shot him in the head.
I'd like to mark an exhibit 37. Oh, what's next in order? 43.
State's Exhibit 43, Mark.
Mr. Woodard, I've in front of you a photograph. Can you describe generally what it is? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you recognize that photograph?
Yes.
And is that a photograph of you that you took at the request of the Port of Seattle Police when you were interviewed?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 43.
No objection.
Exhibit 43 is admitted?
We could publish.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to turn on the other television.
I think we need to get both of the monitors on. I think that's what the jury's indicating.
Yes, Your Honor.
Give us a moment. Give us a minute. We'll get it.
I'm in the way. Coming on. Okay.
Jury, all the monitors on now, can you see? Okay, I see thumbs up, okay.
You're looking at Exhibit 43. Could you describe what you're demonstrating there?
I was showing the officers the position Jesse was in after he got shot.
And the picture appears to show somebody who's on their backside,
Well, yeah, yes.
and the shoulders are a little bit off the ground. Is that right?
For a brief second, they were, yeah.
Was this at the time the second shot hit?
I mean, that was after the first shot, yeah, and before the second shot hit, yes.
Now, what did you see the defendant do between the first and the second shot?
I seen him fall on, he was on the ground in the same position you see there, and he just kind of rocked back from there and was dying.
Right. Okay, and that was Mr. Sarey.
Yes.
What did you see the defendant, Mr. Nelson, do after he fired the first shot?
I seen him look at me and point his gun towards my direction and then come back and shot Jesse point blank in the head.
Are you able to demonstrate for the jury what it looked like, what the defendant looked like at that time, in terms of his arms and his?
Oh, yeah. So if you were Jesse and I was the clock, he went like this and then went back and shot him in the head.
And do you know how long it took between the first shot and the second shot? Did you have a sense of that?
Not very long, a few seconds.
For the record, Mr. Koppel, will you have your witness describe what he demonstrated for the jury?
Yes, I will, Your Honor. It looked, when you were demonstrating, it looked like you had your arms out in a way you have a gun in your hand, and you turn to your right side and then turn back toward straight ahead.
That's correct.
Is that how the defendant looked before he shot the second time?
Yes.
Did you at any point see Mr. Nelson his face, anything about him at that time?
His eyes.
What did you see?
Um,
I'm just asking you what you observed.
it looked like somebody that was lost.
What did you observe? Did you actually look into his eyes?
Yes, I did. Kind of
Did that last?
a split second. But it was enough time to kind of lock eyes and know you locked eyes with somebody.
I'd like to mark another exhibit, Your Honor.
Okay.
Next in order, please.
This is State's Exhibit 44.
Okay, I've put in front of you a photograph that's been marked as State's Exhibit 44. Do you recognize that?
Yeah.
Does that accurately or reasonably depict what the scene looked like after the shot occurred, soon after the shot occurred, the second shot occurred?
Yeah.
And we offer Exhibit 44.
No objection.
Exhibit 44 is admitted.
Yes. We'll publish it, Your Honor.
Yes.
Now, during your testimony, you mentioned a box of trash or trash that Mr. Sarey was looking through.
Yes.
Is that box next to the ice box?
Yes, it is.
And you can see some cups in there. Did you see Mr. Sarey do anything with the cups?
He was trying to get a drink of anything.
And during the struggle, were you approximately where the police officer is in this picture?
Yeah, at one point, yeah. Yes.
And you meant, in the photograph, there's an ice box of some kind. Do you see that?
Yeah.
How, if at all, did the ice box come into play during the struggle between the defendant and Mr. Sarey?
I mean, really not much. I feel like they were fighting right next to it. That's pretty much it. You know, they might have bumped into it once or twice, but I don't. That's about it.
Now, you mentioned, while you were answering that question about the fighting, at any point during the struggle as you saw it, did you see Mr. Sarey punch or strike the defendant?
No.
What did you see him doing?
I saw him really just with his arms kind of going wildly, like he was just trying to get away. He was just trying to flee.
Mark an exhibit, Your Honor.
Yes.
It's Exhibit 45.
Mr. Woodard, I'm showing you State's Exhibit 45, which is another photograph. Is that a photograph that depicts with reasonable accuracy the way your black car looked after the incident?
Yes.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 45.
No objection.
Exhibit 45 admitted.
May we publish?
Yes, you may.
Okay. Now we're looking at Exhibit 68 on the screen, Mr. Woodard. The black car that's parked there, is that your or your wife's car?
Yes.
What kind of car is that?
Suzuki XL7.
And on the car hood, can you make out a object?
Yeah, it's the knife.
Is that where you put it during the incident?
Yeah.
And in front of the car, you can see some parking bumpers there. Are those the parking bumpers you earlier described when stating where you were during the incident?
Yeah.
And were you on the side of the parking bumper for the most part that's toward the cars, or was it toward the ice box?
Towards cars.
Okay. If I could have a moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Mark an exhibit, Your Honor.
Yes.
State's Exhibit 46.
Mr. Woodard, I have in front of you State's Exhibit 46. Does State's Exhibit 46 reasonably or accurately depict the folding knife on top of your black car?
Yes.
Your Honor, we offer Exhibit 46.
Any objection?
Objection.
Exhibit 46 is admitted.
Publish, Your Honor.
You may.
And is that the knife that you picked up during the scuffle that we described today?
Yes.
Is that how it looked when you picked it up?
Yes.
Is that how it looked when you put it on the car?
Yes.
So, Mr. Woodard, on the day of the incident, you were interviewed a few times. Is that right?
Yes.
Sounds like right after the incident, you were interviewed by Mr. Benavente,
Yes.
the officer.
Yes.
And that evening, you were also interviewed by the Federal Way Police Department.
Yep.
And then in about August of 2019, you were interviewed by the Port of Seattle Police.
I'm sure I was.
And you were also interviewed by the defense lawyers as well in
Yes.
this case. Have you done your best throughout all these interviews to tell the truth about what you saw?
100%. Yes.
All right, I have nothing further.